On January 2nd, 1960, the thermometer in a tiny South Australian outback town hit 50.7 degrees Celsius. That is hotter than most kitchen ovens on their lowest setting. And people still live there, on purpose, right now. There is a town in outback Australia with a permanent population of 6 people. 6. It has a pub, 2 motels, a petrol station, a campground, and its own airstrip. And every single one of those 6 people made a deliberate choice to be there. There is another town where 60% of residents have never seen the walls of their own home. Because their home has no walls. They carved it out of rock, underground, in a desert that hits 52 degrees Celsius in summer. And they have no intention of leaving. Today, we are going inside 12 of Australia's most isolated towns. Places so remote, so extreme, and so utterly cut off from the rest of the country that by every logical measure, they should not exist. Towns that survived gold rushes, world wars, floods, unbearable heat, and government abandonment. Towns where the locals look you dead in the eye and say they would not live anywhere else. We are counting down from 12 to 1. And by the time we hit number 1, you will understand something about Australia that most Australians never stop to think about. Number 12, Silverton. Silverton sits about 25 kilometres northwest of Broken Hill in far western New South Wales. Today, roughly 50 people call it home. But walk around town and you will see heritage buildings from the 1880s still standing. A hotel that has been pouring beers for over a century. And film props from some of Australia's most iconic movies sitting in the red dust like they belong there. Because they do. In 1882, silver was discovered here. Within a few years, Silverton had a population of around 3,000 people. Banks, hotels, a courthouse, a newspaper. Then the silver ran out. By 1889, most people had packed up and moved to Broken Hill, where new ore deposits had been found. The town did not die completely, but it came close. What saved Silverton was something nobody planned. The landscape, flat red earth, dramatic rock formations, the kind of sky that looks like a painting, turned out to be perfect for film. Mad Max 2 was shot on the roads outside town in 1981. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome followed in 1985, filmed partly in Coober Pedy, but using the surrounding district. The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, came through in 1994. More recently, sequences from various productions have used Silverton's extraordinary visual backdrop. The 50 people who live there now run museums, the Heritage Pub, and a small tourism economy built entirely on the town's refusal to disappear. The Mad Max Museum is run by a local who has spent decades collecting props and memorabilia. A population of 50 running a film set ghost town. Honestly, it works. Number 11, Daly Waters. Here is a town whose entire economy is one building. Daly Waters in the Northern Territory is little more than a dot on the Stuart Highway, about 600 kilometres south of Darwin. The permanent population is somewhere between 10 and 20 people, depending on the season. The building in question is the Daly Waters Pub. Corrugated iron roof, wooden veranda, walls covered floor to ceiling in bras, banknotes, business cards, hats, and handwritten notes from travellers dating back decades. It is part pub, part living museum, part community centre. For most people passing through, it is the only reason to stop. But Daly Waters has a history that its modest appearance completely hides. In the 1930s, the airstrip here was one of the most important in Australia. Sheer Qantas used Daly Waters as a refuelling stop on its England to Australia air route. At one point, it was handling more international air traffic than almost anywhere else in the country. During World War II, the RAAF took over the airstrip and used it as a staging base for operations across northern Australia and the Pacific. Then the war ended. Longer-range aircraft stopped needing the refueling stop. The strategic importance vanished overnight. And Daily Waters went back to being a pub on a highway in the middle of nowhere. The people running it today know exactly what they have. The bartender knows every grey nomad's name by the second visit. Truckies stop in winter, tourists stop in summer, and the pub keeps running. A World War II air hub, now surviving on cold beer and outback hospitality. That is Daily Waters. Number 10. Kiwirrkurra. Drive 12 hours northwest of Sydney and you will reach Kiwirrkurra, the most remote town in New South Wales, sitting right in the corner where New South Wales meets Queensland and South Australia. The population in the 2016 census was 134 people. It has not grown much since. The first European to really grapple with this country was explorer Charles Sturt, who set out in 1844 to find what he believed was an inland sea at the centre of Australia. He was wrong about the sea, and he got punished for it. Sturt and his party were trapped near Kiwirrkurra for 6 months at a place now called Depot Glen, waiting for rain that would not come. He carved his camp tree. That tree still stands there today. Then in 1938, something happened to Kiwirrkurra that sits much heavier in Australian history. The Aborigines Protection Board forcibly removed almost the entire Aboriginal population of the region, the Wangkumara people, and relocated them to places like Brewarina, Menindee, and Kempsey. Hundreds of kilometres away from their country. Many never came back. The town repopulated slowly over subsequent decades. Today it has fuel, a couple of pubs, the Sturt National Park headquarters nearby, and a school. But here is the thing that will stop you. Children in Kiwirrkurra who want to go to high school must travel 365 kilometres to reach the nearest one. That is not a typo. 365 kilometres. Some are educated via School of the Air. Some go to boarding schools they have never chosen. And the families who stay do so because Kiwirrkurra, despite everything, is theirs. If you are finding these stories as gripping as I think you are, do one thing right now. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We go this deep on Australian history and geography every single week, and the next 9 towns on this list get considerably more extreme. Stay with me. Number 9. Halls Creek. On Christmas Day, 1885, a prospector named Charlie Hall found a 28-ounce gold nugget in the eastern Kimberley region of Western Australia. Word spread. Within months, more than 15,000 people had descended on the remote site that would bear his name. The gold rush lasted less than 3 months. Most people left. Some stayed and are buried in the small cemetery at what is now called Old Halls Creek. You can still visit their graves today. The town that survived the rush became a service centre for surrounding cattle stations and Aboriginal communities. Then, in 1948, something extraordinary happened. The town physically moved. A new airfield had been built 16 kilometres away, and the Darby-Kununurra Road was rerouted. The old site was running out of water anyway. So, over the course of about a decade, the entire community relocated. Buildings moved, businesses moved, residents moved. The police station was the last to go, finally relocating in 1961. Old Halls Creek still stands, a collection of ruins and empty stone buildings that you can drive through today as a kind of open-air monument to what a gold rush does to a place. New Halls Creek has a complicated present. It is 2,962 kilometres northeast of Perth. It has a high crime rate, has dealt with serious youth violence, and operates under alcohol restrictions. Packaged liquor above 2.7% was restricted from licensed premises following a 2009 ruling. But it is also predominantly Aboriginal, with strong Jaru and Kija community ties that predate European contact by thousands of years. And there is one more thing Halls Creek gave Australia. In 1917, Aurora drover named Jimmy Darcy was critically injured and could not get medical care because of the town's isolation. The story captured the national imagination. It directly inspired Reverend John Flynn to establish the Royal Flying Doctor Service, a medical network that still operates across Australia today. Darcy died, but his death changed the country. Number 8. Kiwirrkurra. This one is different from every other town on this list. Kiwirrkurra sits in the Gibson Desert of Western Australia, 1,200 kilometres east of Port Hedland and 700 kilometres west of Alice Springs. It is, by most measurements, the most remote inhabited settlement in Australia. The population is approximately 165 people, almost all of them Pintupi Aboriginal people. Here is the fact that puts everything into perspective. In 1984, not 1884, not some distant colonial era, but 1984, the last group of uncontacted Aboriginal people in Australia walked out of this desert. They were Pintupi people. They had never seen a white person. They had never seen a car. And some of their relatives live in Kiwirrkurra today. The community established the Kiwirrkurra Indigenous Protected Area, formally launched in 2014, to preserve their country and maintain sovereignty over land that their people have managed for tens of thousands of years. Despite being surrounded by desert, the community sits in a low-lying area with poor drainage, meaning that in wet years, it floods. A desert community that periodically floods. The logistical complexity of life here is almost impossible to overstate. A Perth Catholic school now sends students here each year on immersion programs. The connection between the students arriving and the community receiving them represents something genuinely rare, a living cultural continuity that most of the world has lost. Kiwirrkurra is not a relic. It is a living place with living people whose memory of the uncontacted world is only one generation old. Number 7. Oodnadatta. There is a roadhouse in outback South Australia painted entirely pink. The pump is pink. The building is pink. The sign is pink. There is even a pink car out front. A 1969 Dodge Phoenix, painted by owner Adam Plate in 1983 when he and his partner, Linny Trevelyan, were trying to make their remote outpost feel like something worth stopping for. It worked. Oodnadatta sits 1,043 kilometres north of Adelaide, on an unsealed road in a landscape that has almost no shade and almost no rain. The population in the 2021 census was 102 people, and more than 2/3 identify as Aboriginal, members of the Arabana people whose connection to this country predates European contact by an enormous margin. But here is the number that defines Oodnadatta above all others, 50.7 degrees Celsius. So that is the temperature recorded here on the 2nd of January 1960. The highest temperature ever officially recorded in Australia. Not matched since, not exceeded anywhere in the country, and people live there. The town has a layered history. It was a camel caravan depot in the 1880s and 1890s, when Afghan cameleers hauled supplies into Central Australia before roads existed. It was a railway hub. The Central Australia Railway ran through here from 1891 until 1981, when the line was rerouted 160 kilometres to the west, and Oodnadatta was effectively bypassed by progress. When the railway left, most of the non-Aboriginal population went with it. The Aboriginal families who had been moving into the town since the 1950s stayed and bought the empty houses. They run the Transcontinental Hotel. They run the Pink Roadhouse. They run the school, which is now the town's biggest employer. Oodnadatta did not decline after the railway left. It became something else. Number 6. Lightning Ridge. In 2015, a report called Dropping Off the Edge assessed disadvantage across New South Wales communities. Lightning Ridge was listed as one of the poorest places in the entire state. The unemployment rate was high, educational attainment was low, services were stretched, and directly beneath the town, underground, were some of the most valuable gemstones on Earth. Lightning Ridge in northwestern New South Wales is the only significant source of black opal in the world. These are not regular opals. Black opals have a dark body tone that makes the play of colour, the fire, dramatically more vivid than any other variety. A single high-quality black opal can fetch tens of thousands of dollars per carat, and the ground under Lightning Ridge is full of them. The town has a population of 1,946 as of the 2021 census, yet with a median age of 53 years. That median age tells you something important. Many people came here young, as fossickers and dreamers, planning to find their fortune and leave. And then they just stayed. They are still there, still mining, still hoping. Or they found enough to be comfortable and decided they liked the life. The town's name has a mythological origin. The local story is that it dates to an incident in the 1870s when a shepherd, his dog, and 600 sheep were all killed by lightning while sheltering on a ridge. It is almost certainly an outback myth, but it is also the kind of story that sticks. One more detail about Lightning Ridge that perfectly captures its character. Paul Hogan, the Crocodile Dundee actor, claimed on a 1970s television talent show that he was from Lightning Ridge to make himself sound more exotic. He was actually from Western Sydney. The Lightning Ridge locals found out, and they have never corrected the record because the myth drove tourism. That is the kind of pragmatic, dry humid community this is. We are halfway through the list, and the towns are only getting more extreme. The next 5 are the ones that will genuinely make your jaw drop, including a town with a time zone shared by nobody else on Earth, a town where the entire population lives underground, and the town that officially recorded Australia's most terrifying heat event. Stay right here. Number 5, Kiwirrkurra. Halfway across the Nullarbor Plain, one of the most featureless stretches of land on the planet, there is a small community called Kiwirrkurra. About 50 people live here, right on the border between Western Australia and South Australia, roughly 1,400 kilometres east of Perth. Kiwirrkurra operates in its own time zone. Central Western Standard Time, UTC plus 8 hours and 45 minutes, is used by Kiwirrkurra and almost nowhere else on Earth. Not the rest of Western Australia, not South Australia, just Kiwirrkurra. The town sits geographically between 2 time zones, and residents found the half-hour compromise more practical than committing to either. It is the kind of decision that could only be made by a community so isolated that the normal rules of coordination simply do not apply. But the thing you need to see, and we mean actually see, because photographs of this are extraordinary, is what happened to the old Kiwirrkurra telegraph station. Built in 1877 to relay messages across the continent, the station was a vital piece of colonial infrastructure. By the early 20th century, newer technology had made it redundant. It was abandoned. And then the sand moved in. The Nullarbor sand dunes have been slowly consuming the old telegraph station for over a century. Today, the building is half buried. You can see the roofline, a few windows, the tops of walls. The rest has disappeared under drifting white sand. It looks like something from an apocalyptic film, but it is completely real, sitting right outside the current town. A 147-year-old building being swallowed alive by the desert. And 50 people live nearby, watching it happen. Number 4, Birdsville, 110 people. That is all? That is the entire permanent population of Birdsville, one of the most famous outback towns in Australia, sitting on the edge of the Simpson Desert in far southwestern Queensland, 1,590 kilometres west of Brisbane. For 362 days of the year, those 110 people run a hospital, a hotel, a museum, a visitor information centre, and a small airport for each other and for the trickle of adventurous tourists passing through. They maintain the only services for hundreds of kilometres in any direction. Then, on the first weekend of September, something extraordinary happens. More than 5,000 people arrive. The Birdsville races, first held in the 1880s, transformed this tiny settlement into the largest and most improbable horse racing event in Australia. The town's population increases by more than 4,500%. For about 72 hours, Birdsville is genuinely chaotic, genuinely celebratory, and genuinely unlike anything else in the country. The history of keeping Birdsville supplied is a story on its own. Tom Cruise drove the Birdsville Track Mail Run from 1936 to 1957, a 523-kilometre route from Marrie in South Australia to Birdsville, in a Leyland Badger truck that broke down, got bogged in sand, and flooded regularly. Each trip took 2 weeks. He delivered mail, food, medicine, and supplies to stations along the route. He is now legendary. A documentary was made about him. Today, Birdsville still faces the same fundamental challenge it always has. When the Diamantina River floods, the track closes and the town can be completely cut off, sometimes for weeks at a time. The 110 people who live there know this going in. They stock up, they plan, and they stay. Number 3, Marble Bar. Here is a temperature record that has stood for more than 100 years and shows no sign of being broken. From October 31st, 1923 to April 7th, 1924, a period of 161 consecutive days, the temperature in Marble Bar, a small town in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, never dropped below 37.8 degrees Celsius. Not once, not even at night. For 161 days straight, the mercury stayed above the point that most cities experience only on their worst summer days. That record still stands. No other inhabited town anywhere in the world has recorded anything comparable. Marble Bar was founded in 1893 during a gold rush that briefly brought the population to over 5,000 people. Today, the population is a few hundred. The gold is long gone. What remains are some genuinely impressive heritage government buildings from the 1890s, built from local stone by a government that clearly thought Marble Bar was going to be a major regional centre. There is also a pub, a caravan park, and an extraordinarily beautiful Jasper Rock bar across a local creek that gave the town its name. Daytime temperatures from October to May regularly exceed 49 degrees Celsius. The people who live here describe the heat in a way that sounds almost affectionate. It is consistent. It is honest. It is what the place is. You know what you are walking into. Also discovered near Marble Bar, stromatolite fossils. Some of the earliest forms of life ever found on Earth, dating back billions of years. So beneath the hottest town in Australia lies evidence of the planet's oldest life, only in the Pilbara. Number 2, William Creek, 6 people. That is the permanent population of William Creek, officially the smallest town in South Australia, sitting roughly 880 kilometres north of Adelaide on the Oodnadatta Track, an unsealed outback road that is closed by rain and not serviced by any sealed highway for hundreds of kilometres in either direction. 6 people. And yet, William Creek has a pub, the William Creek Hotel, heritage listed and serving since the 1880s. It has 2 motels. It has a campground. It has a petrol station that is the only fuel stop between Marrie, Coober Pedy and Oodnadatta, a stretch covering several hundred kilometres of outback road. It has a landing strip served by scenic flight operators taking tourists over Lake Eyre, the massive salt lake to the east. It has a golf course. It receives mail twice a week via a 4-wheel drive mail truck that also carries passengers and freight. The town sits entirely within Anna Creek Station, the world's largest working cattle property at 23,800 square kilometres, an area almost half the size of Tasmania. In 1998, a young Austrian tourist's four-wheel drive got stuck in sand near Lake Eyre. She tried to walk back to William Creek. She did not make it. There is a memorial to her in the town's small park, a quiet reminder of how genuinely dangerous this country is for those who underestimate it. The 6 people who run William Creek do so because someone has to, and because they have found meaning in being the last outpost. The pub walls are covered in business cards, number plates, and traveller notes going back decades. Every person who passes through leaves something. What William Creek may have 6 residents, but it has been visited by hundreds of thousands of people who needed it at a moment of genuine remoteness. Number 1, Coober Pedy, South Australia. Nothing prepares you for Coober Pedy. Drive 850 kilometres north of Adelaide on the Stuart Highway, and you will see the landscape around you start to look increasingly strange. The ground becomes pale, almost white. Small mounds appear, hundreds of them, then thousands, dotting the landscape as far as the eye can reach. From the air, it looks like the surface of the moon. Actually, NASA has used photos of the Coober Pedy opal fields to illustrate what a lunar surface looks like. By 1999, there were more than 250,000 mineshaft entrances in the ground around Coober Pedy. 250,000 holes in the earth, all dug by people looking for opal. The town was discovered on the 1st of February 1915 when a 14-year-old boy named Willie Hutchison wandered away from a gold prospecting camp and found an opal on the ground. His father James had led the expedition and turned up nothing. Willie changed everything. Within years, miners were flooding in. After both world wars, returned soldiers and then European migrants from Greece, Croatia, Serbia, Hungary, Italy arrived seeking opportunity in this strange, burning country. At one point, up to 60% of Coober Pedy's miners had Southern or Eastern European ancestry. Today, the town has a population of approximately 2,000 to 2,500 people, representing over 45 nationalities. And roughly 60% of them live underground. Not metaphorically, literally underground, in homes carved from sandstone called dugouts. Or the temperature underground stays between 23 and 25 degrees Celsius year-round, regardless of what is happening on the surface. In summer, the surface hits 52 degrees. Underground, it is perfect. Residents have carved bookshelves, archways, swimming pools, and wine cellars directly into the rock. Some families tunneled into neighbouring properties to connect their homes. There are underground churches, including a Serbian Orthodox church hand-carved by local volunteers in 1993, with stained glass windows set into sandstone walls. There are underground hotels. There is even an underground campsite. The Olympic Australis, the largest gem-quality opal ever found, was discovered here in August 1956, approximately 9 metres below the ground. It weighs 17,000 carats and was valued at 2.5 million Australian dollars. It is still held in private hands. Coober Pedy has supplied the majority of the world's precious opals for over a century. Yet the town has a CIFA disadvantage index that makes it one of the most economically struggling communities in South Australia. The contradiction, sitting on a fortune, living with scarcity, is something Coober Pedy has never fully resolved. Jenny Goff has lived here since 1961. While digging her underground home with her husband Ron, they broke through a wall and discovered an abandoned opal mine on the other side. That mine is now the Old Timers Mine Museum, and it is still open to visitors. Jenny says she will never leave. She is not the exception. She is the rule. 12 towns, 12 impossible stories. A town of 6 people with its own pub and airstrip. A heat record nobody has broken in 101 years. A community whose living memory includes people who had never seen the outside world. A whole civilization buried underground in the South Australian desert. What connects all of them is something simple and something that is easy to miss if you look at these places from the outside. None of these people are stuck. Every single one of them made a choice, or their parents did, or their grandparents did, or their ancestors did, tens of thousands of years ago. And that choice has calcified into something that no amount of remoteness, heat, flooding, or government neglect has been able to dissolve. Australia likes to think of itself as a coastal country, and numerically it is. But the soul of Australia, the genuinely strange, genuinely ancient, genuinely defiant part, lives about 800 kilometres from the nearest Westfield shopping centre, in a dugout carved out of sandstone, or behind the bar of a corrugated iron pub, or in a community that was mapping songlines before Europe had a written language. These towns are not curiosities. They are the point. If this video gave you something you did not know before, and I hope it did, subscribe now and leave a comment telling me which of these 12 towns genuinely surprised you the most. My money is on Kiwirrkurra, but I have been surprised before.